Hello and welcome viewers. You're watching In Depth with your host Kriti Mishra. The Directive Principles of State Policy of Indian Constitution serve as a beacon for policy making that guides the nation towards its envisioned goals of justice, equality and prosperity. These principles outline the socio-economic objectives that the state is tasked with pursuing to ensure the well-being and dignity of its citizens. These principles are not static, but evolve over time to address emerging socio-economic challenges and the changing needs of the society. They allow for adaptation and innovation in governance, strategies to meet evolving circumstances. Part 4 of the Constitution of India contains the directive principles of the state policy.
Our difficulty is
The founding fathers of Indian Constitution were aware of the fact that an independent Indian state was going to face many challenges. After colonial rule for almost 200 years, the country was left with widespread poverty, hunger, and with deep-rooted socio-economic inequalities. The framers of our constitution felt that certain policy directions, guidelines, or instructions for the governance of the country were required to handle these problems. Legislatures, executive, and administration of independent India were expected to exercise their powers in accordance with the directions and guidelines given in this part of the Constitution. Directive principles are certain ideals, particularly aiming at socio-economic justice, which, according to the framers of Constitution, Indian state should strive for. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar described directive principles as a novel feature of the Constitution. They are in the nature of general directions, instructions, or guidelines to the state. Directive principles embody the aspirations of the people of India. Objectives and ideals which union and the state governments must bear in mind while making laws and formulating policies. The directive principles are the life-giving provisions of the Constitution. They represent the philosophy of social justice incorporated in the Constitution of India. Although directive principles are not legally binding by any court, they are fundamental in the governance of the country. They lay down a code of conduct for the legislatures, executive, and administrators of India to discharge their responsibility in tune with these ideals.
our difficulty is how to make the heterogeneous mess that we have today take a decision in common and march in a cooperative way on that road which is bound to lead us to unity.
These principles are aimed at promoting the welfare of the people and the establishment of a just society. They emphasize principles of justice, equality and fraternity in governance of the country. These principles may also guide the state in fulfilling its international obligations and commitments. They reflect principles of international law and conventions that India has ratified, reinforcing the country's commitment to global standards of human rights and development. The directive principles contained in the Indian Constitution are taken from the Irish Constitution. The Irish themselves had, however, taken the ideas from the Constitution of Spain. The idea of such policies can be traced to the Declaration of Rights of Man, proclaimed in Revolutionary France, and the Declaration of Independence by the American colonies. Similar guidelines were provided in the form of instruments of instruction in the Government of India Act 1935. Directive principles of state policy aim at making India a welfare state. The directive principles are classified on the basis of their ideological source and objectives. Article 38. The state shall strive to promote the welfare of the people by securing and protecting a social order, by ensuring social, economic and political justice, and by minimizing inequalities in income, status, facilities and opportunities. Article 39. The state shall, in particular, direct its policies towards securing right to an adequate means of livelihood to all the citizens. The ownership and control of material resources shall be organized in a manner to serve the common good. The state shall avoid concentration of wealth in few hands. Equal pay for equal work for both men and women. The protection of the strength and health of the workers. Childhood and youth shall not be exploited. Article 41. To secure the right to work, to education, and to public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disability. Article 42. The state shall make provisions for securing just and humane conditions of work and for maternity leave. Article 43. The state shall endeavour to secure to all workers a living wage and a decent standard of life. Article 43A. The state shall take steps to secure the participation of workers in the management of industries. Article 47. To raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living and to improve public health. Article 40. The state shall take steps to organize village panchayats as units of self-government. Article 43. The state shall endeavour to promote cottage industries on an individual or cooperative basis in rural areas. Article 43B. To promote voluntary formation, autonomous functioning, democratic control, and professional management of cooperative societies. Article 46. The state shall promote educational and economic interests of the weaker sections of the people, particularly of the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and the other weaker sections. Article 47. The state shall take steps to improve public health and prohibit consumption of intoxicating drinks and drugs that are injurious to health. Article 48. To prohibit the slaughter of cows, calves, and other milch and draught cattle, and to improve their breeds. Let's take a look at the directives based on liberal intellectual principles. Article 44. The state shall endeavour to secure for the citizens a uniform civil code through the territory of India. Article 45. To provide early childhood care and education for all children until they complete the age of 6 years. Article 48. To organize agriculture and animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines. Article 48A. To protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forests and wildlife of the country. Article 49. The state shall protect every monument or place of artistic or historic interest. Article 50. The state shall take steps to separate judiciary from executive in the public services of the state. Article 51. It declares that to establish international peace and security, the state shall endeavour to maintain just and honourable relations with the nations, foster respect for international law and treaty obligations, encourage settlement of international disputes by arbitration. 42 Constitutional Amendment 1976 introduced certain changes in Part 4 of the Constitution by adding new verdicts. Article 39A. To provide free legal aid to the poor. Article 43A. Participation of workers in management of industries. Article 48A. To protect and improve the environment. 44th Constitutional Amendment of 1978 inserted Section 2 to Article 38, which declares that the state in particular shall strive to minimize economic inequalities in income and eliminate inequalities in status, facilities and opportunities, not amongst the individuals but also amongst the groups. It also eliminated the right to property from the list of fundamental rights. 86th Amendment Act of 2002 changed the subject matter of Article 45 and made elementary education as a fundamental right under Article 21A. Some of the measures in this effect are as follows. In order to give effect to the principle of Article 39, various legislations were enacted by the government with the objective to organize the ownership and control of material resources to serve the common good. Some of these include land reforms. Land is the most essential material resource in an agrarian country like India. Through land reforms, the zamindari system was abolished, ceiling on land holdings imposed, and surplus land distributed among landless labourers. Minimum Wages Act, income tax, and other taxation measures to tax high-income groups and provide exemption and relief to the weaker sections. Through 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act 1992, the government fulfilled the constitutional obligation stated in Article 40. Three-tier Panchayati Raj system was introduced at the village, block and district levels in almost all parts of the country. Cottage industries. To promote cottage industries as per Article 43, the government has established several boards such as Village Industries Board, Khadi and Village Industries Commission, All India Handicraft Board, Silk Board, Quad Board, which provide essential help to cottage industries in finance and marketing. Government has also implemented provisions related to free and compulsory education as provided in Article 45. Introduced by the 86th Constitutional Amendment, subsequently passed the Rights to Education Act 2009. Elementary education has been accepted as fundamental right of each child between 6 to 14 years of age. The emphasis on early childhood care and education in the newly unveiled National Education Policy seeks to realize the provisions of Article 45, which aim to provide for early childhood care and education for all children until they complete the age of 6 years. Rural area development programs such as the Community Development Program 1952, Integrated Rural Development Program of 1978-79, and Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act of 2006 were launched to raise the standard of living, particularly in rural areas, as stated in the central government-sponsored schemes like Pradhan Mantri Gram Swasthya Yojana, National Rural Health Mission are being implemented to fulfill the social sector responsibilities of the state. The Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, the Forest Conservation Act of 1980, and the Environment Protection Act of 1986 have been enacted to safeguard the wildlife and the forests, respectively. The Water and Air Pollution Control Acts have provided for the establishment of Central Pollution Control Board. Heritage preservation. The Ancient and the Historical Monument and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act of 1958 has been enacted to protect the monuments, places and objects of national importance. Various programs have been started at the central and state level to ensure adequate means of livelihood and also to ensure good health of women like Janni Suraksha Yojana. Such programs give effect to Article 39, which aims to secure a good standard of living for women in the country. The objective of the Directive Principles is to better the social and economic conditions of society so that people can live a good life. Knowledge of Directive Principles helps a citizen to keep a check on the government. A citizen can use these directives as a measure of the performance of the government and can identify the scope where it lacks. Cooperatives played a huge role in creating an economic model for rural development and providing employment to the poor people so that they can live a dignified life. On 6th of July 2021, the central government created Ministry of Cooperation for realizing the vision of Sehkar Se Samriddhi, that is, prosperity through cooperation, and give a new push to the cooperative movement. The Ministry of Cooperation was created by transferring the existing entries related to cooperation and cooperative in the business of the erstwhile Ministry of Agriculture, Cooperation and Farmers' Welfare. For the promotion of cooperative societies in the country, the word cooperatives was added after unions and associations in Article 19(1)(c) under Part 3 of the Constitution. This enables all the citizens to form cooperatives by giving it the status of fundamental right of citizens. A new Article 43(b) was added in the Directive Principles of the state policy. It says that the state shall endeavour to promote voluntary formation, autonomous functioning, democratic control, and professional management of the cooperative societies. The vision of the Ministry of Cooperation is to foster a cooperative ecosystem that empowers the marginalized, enhances rural development, and contributes to the overall socio-economic growth of the country. The Uniform Civil Code calls for the formulation of one law for India, which would be applicable to all religious communities in matters such as marriage, divorce, inheritance, and adoption. The issue has been at the center of political narrative and debate for a century, and a priority agenda for the Bharatiya Janata Party, which has been pushing for the legislation in Parliament. Prime Minister Modi has time and again pushed for the implementation of Uniform Civil Code, saying it will bring equality and justice.
एक घर में परिवार के एक सदस्य के लिए एक कानून हो, परिवार के दूसरे सदस्य के लिए दूसरा कानून हो, तो क्या वो घर चल पाएगा क्या? कभी भी चल पाएगा क्या? फिर ऐसी दोहरी व्यवस्था से देश कैसे चल पाएगा? हमें याद रखना है कि भारत के संविधान में भी नागरिकों के समान अधिकार की बात कही गई है.
Uniform Civil Code is part of Part 4 of the Constitution, which includes Directive Principles of state policy. The code comes under Article 44 of the Constitution, which lays down that the state shall endeavour to secure a uniform civil code for the citizens throughout the territory of India. The Constitution of India, under Article 44, one of the Directive Principles of state policy, states that the state shall endeavour to secure a uniform civil code for its citizens. However, the framers of the Constitution left it to the discretion of the government to implement a UCC. The UCC can be traced back to the debates during the framing of Indian Constitution as well. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, while formulating the Constitution, had said that a UCC is desirable, but for the moment, it should remain voluntary, and thus the Article 35 of Draft Constitution was added as a part of the Directive Principles of the state policy in Part 4 of the Constitution of India as Article 44. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar believed that a UCC was necessary to promote gender equality, secularism, and national integration. But the implementation of the code has been patchy, as India is a diverse country, with various religious communities following their own personal laws. In India, personal laws governing marriage, divorce, inheritance, and other such matters are based on religious texts and customs. The major religious communities in India, including Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, have their own distinct personal laws. For instance, Hindus are governed by the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955, under the Hindu Succession Act of 1956, which governs the rights of Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, and Sikhs. Hindu women have equal rights to inherit property from their parents and have the same entitlements as Hindu men. While Muslims are governed by the Muslim Personal Law, that is Shariat Application Act of 1937. For Christians, Parsis, and Jews, the Indian Succession Act of 1925 applies. The UCC seeks to replace the existing system of religious personal laws with a uniform set of laws that would be applied consistently to all the citizens. The origin of the UCC dates back to colonial India, when the British government submitted its report in 1835, stressing on the need for uniformity in the codification of Indian laws relating to crimes, evidence, and contracts, specifically recommending that personal laws of Hindus and Muslims be kept outside such codification. Increase in legislations dealing with personal issues in the far end of British rule forced the government to form the B.N. Rao Committee to codify Hindu law in 1941. The task of the Hindu Law Committee was to examine the question of the necessity of common Hindu laws. The committee, in accordance with scriptures, recommended a codified Hindu law which would give equal rights to women. The 1937 Act was reviewed and the committee recommended a civil code of marriage and succession for Hindus. Well, viewers, that's all we had for you in this edition. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Sansad TV. Goodbye for now from my side.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.